Deepak Shukla here, founder at Pearl Lemon. We're a multi-seven-figure marketing agency. And today I want to give you a guide about how to get a pay rise quicker than once every 6 months from me or indeed any organization that you work at. So if you're part of Pearl Lemon, one of our standard things that we do, and if you're in the employee space, if you're looking to accelerate in your career, one of the standard things that we do is that we'll give or we'll review pay rises once every 6 months. And that's quite typical within companies. And what I want to offer you is insights into how you can accelerate that process. Because, of course, if you feel that you deserve pay rises every 3 months, every 4 months, just faster in general, I want to give you the roadmap for how I think, and what you'll tend to discover if you're watching this, if you're a business owner, something that you could share with your employees, as well as an entrepreneurial way of looking ultimately at how you can accelerate it. So there's several key areas I think that become important when you want to accelerate the rate at which you rise within a company. Because if you want faster than generally given pay rises, you need to be able to demonstrate a real ascension in terms of a couple of key areas. So number one, your growth in respect of your role and the rate at which things are accelerating. So one of the ways that you're able to show that is by looking at fundamentally data-driven metrics to demonstrate how quickly progress is coming. And when you're able to tabulate that into a spreadsheet, into a presentation of some kind, that will give you your ultimately foundation from which to work upon. One of the biggest challenges I think that comes up with people sometimes, and I see it happen in our company, and I see it happen with, if you're watching this and you're looking to get a pay rise, is that you'll ultimately get to an emotional moment. Maybe a bill comes in, maybe there's an unexpected issue that arises, maybe there's something that you can't do for a family member, maybe you've had a bad day at the office, and therefore you feel this drive, desire, urge to say, hey, pay me more money, which is fine, because that's part of the human psyche and emotion. But what you want to do in those moments is step back, take a breath, and then really think about, how can I get the best possible outcome in this situation? And what you want to do, there's different things, of course, you can do. You can simply just ask and see what happens. But I would say that that's often the fundamentally lowest rung on the ladder when it comes to achieving the outcome you're looking for, especially when a rule to a degree has been instituted. So you need to look at ways that you can bring outside value. So for example, if you're in any role, you should have KPIs. Where you don't have KPIs, it's either a problem of your boss. So if it's me and you're watching, that's probably something that we've not figured out. But ordinarily across every division within Pearl Lemon, there'll be key performance indicators that people have. How are you performing against those key performing indicators? How quickly are you accelerating in terms of your growth? And what practically can you do potentially outside of that to contribute towards fundamentally a request for a advance in salary or a higher pay rise? So there's fundamentally a whole variety of ways that you can do that. And what sometimes often happens is that many of us do a bad job of documenting all of the value that we're driving and that we're adding. But then also, when asking for a pay rise, what you need to be sure of is that there needs to be a distinction in terms of change of value that then begins to come as a consequence. So when, for example, you are in a position where you're looking for a pay rise, and then you look at your numbers, your data, and you say, cool, there's all these added responsibilities that I'm actually engaged in. That's fantastic. That's a great place to start. What you must do in those situations, though, is not view yourself in isolation, because this is one of the challenges I think that sometimes people have when they think about pay rises. You must view your contribution in the context of the people around you. So it's not just your growth and your responsibilities and your contribution. It's seeing how unique your contribution is. How readily replaceable is the contribution that you drive? Is it realistic the company could immediately slot someone else in? Is it the case that you're doing something as a consequence of your time, energy, investment, and involvement that would be difficult for anyone else to reproduce? How good a job have you done of documenting that? How do you think your peers would ultimately feel or have to say about the idea of you going for a promotion? Would they be in favor of that? Would they say that, yes, your contribution is valid? So there's all of these different scenarios that you really want to think about. So number one, put together data. data to demonstrate your contribution that's driven by metrics. Number two, capture the sentiment of all of your team around you to show this is not only what I think, this is what other people think about my contribution. That's point number two. Point number three, and this is where it gets interesting. You need to role play scenarios potentially where your employer or your client, for example, might say, well, no. What do you do with that? How do you manage that? Do you think so when thinking about that, it's a little bit like what we teach when we're in sales. You need to give someone a demonstration of undeniable value, because then and again, we're talking in the context of getting quicker pay rises than anyone else potentially, or very few people are getting within the company. How do you demonstrate that you're building value that means you should accelerate ahead of everyone else? Because simply wanting it isn't enough. And also the challenge is that if you pressurize and the pay rise is given, it can create buyer's remorse. The reality is that I have, within Pearl Lemon, given pay rises when people have given me emotional drivers so heavily, and then I've reversed it a month later because I've said, but the value wasn't there. I measured your work and I saw no distinction of change. And in fact, I've actually said, well, now that I've recalibrated your role, I don't think that the value was high as it was to begin with. I thought there was a lot of, so there's all of these potential outcomes, but you can sure as fire fundamentally guarantee, and where I have given pay rises and I've doubled people's salaries, where they're, and doubling does happen, where the contribution has been undeniable and they found ways to do things that have gone well outside the realms of the company. So to give you some practical examples of what that might look like. So we had a chap called Usman within the company. He got a significant pay rise because he was able to set up an office and bring in 5 interns. And he said, cool, I'm going to make that work and I'm going to scale our ability to get things done. Shania within the team is consistently now looking at booking appointments internally because she's wanted to contribute towards the expansion of the company, and she was interested in that area of the business. And there are others within the company who understand that if you can help contribute towards the overall growth of the company, and for some of you, it might be built within your roles. So for the person that I'm making this for, who's in our team on the outbound sales position, then it would very simply be looking at, well, because this is how we'd correlate it. There's your data, which is these are the appointments or these are the leads that I've generated. And then we marry that against how do the clients think about your results? And then we marry that with, and have those clients been retained? So that's a really practical way to look at it fundamentally, because that data is difficult to deny. How many appointments? This is how I think I did. This is how my teammates think I did. This is how my client feels about the calls I made, and the client keeps paying. And this has changed quite dramatically within the last 3 months. So when you can bring data like that to the table, you make a very compelling argument. And to be honest with you, if you can bring that data to someone as a decision maker, they think that's the kind of person, because of the way he thinks, I would like to keep around, because that's a person of value. So there's also a lot of value in demonstrating that you've got that critical ability to fundamentally figure out those outcomes, build that narrative, demonstrate the ultimately data that sits underneath it. And if you combine several of these strategies, you will be in a place where you'll be able to, at the very least, have a much higher chance of getting the pay rise, or if you're watching and you're a business owner, encouraging your team to really understand how and where they should focus their energy and effort. Because in fact, me as an employer, I want to give people pay rises. I want to give people quicker pay rises. But what changed and what caused me to put this video together was that I saw people just kept asking for pay rises every 2 months, every 3 months, every 2 months, every 4 months. And I saw that I was unable to ask the client for a pay rise every 2 months, every 4 months, because they said, but where's the differentiation in value, Deepak? I'm not getting higher SEO results. I'm not generating more leads. So for me, the outcome hasn't changed. So this is something that I need to contend with as a business owner. And it's important, if you're watching, that you communicate that with your team, because these are the constraints often that we have to manage. But the better you can do a job of articulating the value, because sometimes people don't see the value, and you need to make it as crystal clear. But then also, once you look at the actual data, what you often see is that emotions and data aren't the same thing. because you can work hard and you can feel you're working hard, but then if it doesn't necessarily correlate with the result, it's good that you know that. It's fantastic that you know that, because then you can make necessary adjustments in your ultimately style, process, direction to achieve the outcome you're looking for. So consider all of these things when you want to get accelerated pay rises. Put together the data, make a compelling argument, role play the idea of there being potential no's, but then also correlate that with how can I deliver an outside return for the company? And if you're unsure as to what an outside return for the company looks like outside of your own role, ask. Because any forward-thinking employer should say, look, these are the things that if you're able to do, I will more aggressively reward you for. And not enough people ask me that question, if I'm being honest. Very few people ask me. Beyond the roles of my beyond the terms of my role, Deepak, I execute my role. Let's just say I had another hour a day, or let's just say I had time in my day, because realistically, I have an 8-hour day, but I can get my work done in 4 hours, whatever. What else could I do that would convince you that I should go from X to Y? Get a list, see what you can do with it. So this should present to you a wholesale series of strategies that you can use to get a pay rise sooner than you thought possible.